Okay, we're going to look at place value. We're doing 10 times as much or 10 times greater and 1/10 of. The key to this is knowing that when you're doing 10 times as much, your value is going to increase by 10. So you're pretty much adding a zero to the value of the number. So if I have a digit in the ones place and I'm looking for 10 times the value of that digit, 1 times 10 is 10. If I'm looking for 10 times as much as a digit in the tens place, 10 times 10 is 100. So as you go from a lower place value to a higher place value, your value is going to increase. So you'll just be adding a zero essentially. When you're going 1/10 of, your value is going to decrease. So you'll be taking a zero away. So if I have a digit that's in the millions place and I take a zero away, the value is going to end up in the 100,000s place. If I'm in the 100,000s place and I'm looking for 1/10 of, I'll go to the 10,000s place. So 10 times as much, you're going to add a zero to the value. 1/10 of, you'll be taking a zero away from the value. So we're going to practice on this place value table. They gave us a number and they want us to find 1/10 of that number and 10 times as much as the number. So if I'm doing 10 times, they're telling me right here, multiply times 10. So if my number is 100 and I multiply times 10, 1 times 1 is 1. Then I count my zeros. I have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So 10 times 100 gives you 1,000. So you would have a number that's in 1,000s place. If I'm doing 1/10 of, I have 100. 1/10 of, I take a zero away. 1/10 of 100 is 10. 7,000. 10 times, I multiply times 10. 1 times 7 is 7. Count my zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 70,000. So I went from thousands to 10,000s. If I have 7,000 and I'm doing 1/10 of, I take a zero away. That's 700. 300 times 10. 1 times 3 is 3. Count my zeros. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I went from 300 to 3,000. If I have 300 and I take a zero away, that leaves me with 30. So 1/10 of 300 equals 30. 80 times 10. 8 times 1 is 8. I count my zeros. 1, 2. 1, 2. So I went from the tens to the hundreds. My value is increasing. If I have 80 and I take away a zero, 1/10 of, I went from tens to ones. So 10 times as much, you add a zero. 1/10 of, you take a zero away. We can practice some more. I have 2,000. 10 times means I'm going to add a zero. So if I add a zero to 2,000, that gives me 20,000. So I went from the thousands place to the 10,000s place. 1/10 of, I take a zero away. So if I have 2,000 and I take a zero away, I go from the thousands place to the hundreds place. 900 and I add a zero. So 900, add a zero. That gives me 9,000. So I go from the hundreds to the thousands. I increase. If I have 900 and I take a zero away, that leaves me with 90. So I go from 900 to 90. I decrease. I took a zero away. 60,000. 60,000. Add a zero. That gives me 600,000. So I'll go from the 10,000 to the 100,000. If I have 60,000 and I'll take a zero away, that leaves me with 6,000. And that means I went down from 10,000 to the thousands place. If I have 500 and I add a 0, that gives me 5,000. So I increased from the hundreds place to the thousands place. If I have 500 and I take a 0 away, I will decrease to the tens place. So 1/10 of 500 gives you 50. They'll sometimes also see it written as a statement. So for example, it says 1/10 of 600 is 6 blank. I tell them, let's change it into an equation. Is gives me equal. This part is my problem. 1/10 of 600. I know that 600 means I'm going to write 600. Oops, sorry. 1/10 of means to take a 0 away. So 1/10 of 600 will give me 60. If I have 60, my 6 is in the tens place. So 1/10 of 600 is 6 tens. And I know that's true because 6 tens, 6 times 10 equals 60. And that's what I have on this side. So 1/10 of 600 is the number that we have right here, 60. It says 10 times as much as 600 is 6 blank. Is my equal. Here's the work I need to figure out. 600. 10 times as much, so I'm multiplying times 10. So 10 times 600. I know that 1 times 6 gives me 6. And I count my zeros. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So this 6 here is at the thousands place. So that'll be 6,000. So 10 times as much as 600 is 6,000. And we know we are correct because when we did our equation up here, we got 6,000. When they see it in a word problem, it says the eatery restaurant has 200 tables. On a recent evening, there were reservations for 1/10 of the tables. How many tables were reserved? If I'm doing 1/10 of, I know that means that I'm going to decrease in value. And that means I'm going to be taking away a 0. So they said that there were 200 tables. If I'm doing 1/10 of, I know my number has to be less than 200. And if I'm going to be taking away a 0, my answer is 20. 1/10 of 200 is 20. So there were 20 tables reserved. 20 were reserved. Oh, 20 tables. Mr. Wilson has $3,000 in his bank account. Ms. Nielsen has 10 times as much money in her bank account as Mr. Wilson has in his bank account. How much money does Ms. Nielsen have in her bank account? 10 times. I'm increasing in value. So that means I'm going to be adding a 0. The number that they told us he had was 3,000. So if I have 3,000 and I'm adding a 0, 1, 2, 3, put my comma. Miss Nelson has $30,000 in her bank account. So again, 1/10 of and 10 times as much It's all about knowing when you need to increase in value and when you need to decrease in value. So when it's 10 times as much again, that means you're going to be multiplying the number by 10, and you're going to be having to add a 0 when you use the rules of multiplying times 10. And when you're doing 1/10 of, you're going to divide by 10, and that just means you're going to be taking a 0 away.